Thanks for tuning into No Wine in No Time. I'm your host Dave, and today we're getting into a special category of French dessert wines called Vin Doux Naturel. Before we get into Vin Doux Naturel and how they get their start, let's talk about two other categories of French dessert wines that certainly bear mentioning. And one's called Liqueurs. And with Liqueurs, these are actually wines that are derived from botrytis grapes. These are grapes that are acted upon by funguses, which actually desiccate them. I know that sounds really kind of gross, but it's done in a completely safe way. And when it desiccates the grapes, it concentrates the sugars and the acid within the grapes, and it makes a beautiful dessert wine. Some of the famous appellations would be one called Sauterne. Then we also have a category called Merlot. And Merlot actually is late harvest grapes, and some of them can be botrytis, and some of them can be what we call sound grapes, in other words, not acted upon by a fungus. So I wanted to put that into context because now we're going to go into a special type of wine that's actually fortified called Vin Doux Naturel. Vin, wine, doux, sweet, naturel. So what happens here is we take the grapes and we actually crush them and we begin to make the wine. In other words, the grape juice is being acted upon by yeast, which converts that sugar into alcohol. Very early in the process, the French use a technique called moutage. And moutage is the act of adding a neutral grape spirit into the wine, which actually kills the yeast, stops fermentation, but what we do is we fortify the wine. In other words, we raise the alcohol content. On a lightly fermented sweet wine, we might have just 2% alcohol. If we would deliver that wine to the market would say, this is sweet, low alcohol, it's very cloying on the palate, and it wouldn't be very successful. So with that extra little kick from the brandy, so to speak, the wine itself ends up having a significant higher alcohol content, which balances out the sweetness a little bit. Now, one thing that's interesting about this category of wine, it is made in the Rhone Valley of France, also in Languedoc, so these are both southern Mediterranean areas, but 80% of all the Vin Doux Naturels come from a place called Roussillon, which is over on the Spanish border. So Roussillon is so famous for Vin Doux Naturel that we actually have a couple here that we want to talk about. So this particular one, this is from the town of Rivesaltes, and this is done in a hors d'âge style. So the first thing you'll notice when you look at these two, this one is brown, this one is very golden in color. So hors d'âge is actually taking and aging the wine, and that can be done in an oxidative or in a reductive style. This one is actually an hors d'âge ambré, and ambré means that it's extremely oxidized, so it gets this brown color. So in previous No Wine in No Time videos, we talked about port wines. This would be the French equivalent of a tawny port. So that's one that you may be interested in. It has a lot of nutty, kind of vanilla type of overtones, with the fruit being extremely oxidized. So instead of grapes, think more raisins in that particular situation. But the one I really want to talk about and sample, this is a Rivesaltes done in a very fresh style. Once again, it was fortified, so we added brandy to it during the processing segment of its life. But this particular one is done from a grape called Muscat. In other countries, we would call that grape Moscato. So this particular one, which comes to us from Cazé, this is a 2010 Muscat de Rivesaltes, and in this particular case, it's 50% Muscat de Petit Grand and 50% Muscat Alexander. So this particular wine is really quite interesting because while it does retain a lot of the sweetness, it's also extremely fresh in its persona. So it pairs very well with a lot of desserts. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. The first thing that we see is it's extremely golden in color. Really has a beautiful gold, way beyond straw yellow, really quite in the golden section. If we give a little sniff, the first thing that we're going to see is that it liberates all these beautiful fruits, everything from lychee to peach to apricot to a little bit of almost melon in there. Let's go ahead and give this a taste. When we taste the Muscat de Rivesaltes, the first thing we notice is the sweet entry in the mouth. On the front side of the palate is where our sweet receptors are. But as it hits mid-palate, the first thing that we notice is all those fruit flavors coming through. A little bit of honeysuckle, a little bit of peach, a little bit of nectarine on the palate, and then it kind of fades with a little bit of vanilla on the back side of the palate. Now, all the way through, there's a stripe that is actually acidic in the wine. So when we think about some of the dessert wines we've had in the past, if they're too sweet, then there's no balance to it, and it ends up wearing out very quickly. So one thing that we talk about quite a bit on No Wine in No Time is food pairings. I want to bring in my absolute favorite pairing. So my camera person, Nancy. So come on in and share this with me. When we talk about French delicacies, nothing could be more wonderful than coconut macarons or absolutely delicious like creme brulee. So Nancy and I spent a little bit of time in the kitchen before getting ready for this No Wine in No Time. So we're actually going to toast, we're going to have a little bit of these delicacies and enjoy some Rivesaltes. So we're going to ask for you to tune in next time, because soon you'll know wine
in
in
no
no time. Delicious. Let's get some creme brulee.